Do you want to know how to build brand awareness and grow your expertise? Well, one of the fastest ways is a podcast. That's why this week I'm interviewing Andy Martin, the co-founder of Ozcast Network, to talk about how he started in radio, how you can start podcasting, and how you can build your brand awareness through social media. My favorite topic. Can you tell? I'm Caria Watt, the creator of the CARIACARES show and a digital strategist with nearly 2 decades of experience in marketing and communications.
Gosh, I sound old.
It's my mission to help you achieve and exceed your digital marketing and social media goals through a tailored digital strategy for your business and be your digital coach so that you can turn your followers into customers. For the best digital marketing and social media tips and to rank higher on Google search, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to be notified when I publish a new video. And you can follow me on social media at Caria Watt because it's free. It's actually where I have most of my conversations and you can ask me questions. So now we have Q&A with Andy. Yes, Q&A.
Hey!
Okay, Andy, thanks for coming on the CARIACARES show. It's a real pleasure to have you here today.
My pleasure.
My first question is, can you tell me how you got into radio, broadcasting and podcasting?
Yeah, so it all started back in 2001. I was in year 12 at school and heard about a radio station, introduction to radio course, so got involved with that. That went for about sort of 6 weeks, and then the radio station Fresh FM, which is like a little community broadcaster here in Adelaide, asked me to become a member, and then that led to me being a volunteer for about 7 years, and then I was able to get employed there for about 3 to 4 years, which led from operations manager to station manager for a bit. And then while I was doing that, I got into commercial radio, and that was just like street teaming stuff, giving out Icicle cans of Coke everywhere across Adelaide. And then I joined another commercial radio station called Nova, just paneling the breakfast show basically. And then that led to becoming an announcer and doing some production and again getting involved in the digital stuff, and became a digital content producer, imaging producer, which is audio, and also announcer for the last 11 years. That finished up in about December last year. And then while I was doing that, a little hobby on the side, a little passion project known as podcasting came about. 3 mates, we decided to start a podcast in the lounge room of my place, and we had an esky. Just started recording to see where it went. Did all right. And then one of my radio mates wanted to do a podcast and didn't know how to, so we helped him out. And then that then progressed to us now being the Ozcast Network and having just over 50 podcasts. So that's how that sort of happened. So it's been a 19-year sort of journey, I guess.
Well, that's a great journey, isn't it? For anyone starting out, you have to start somewhere, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And the community sort of way of doing it, there's just so much passion around, and you're able to make mistakes and not have huge consequences if you did it in the commercial world. So that's been a massive help and a really, really good learning curve and training ground for where we are at today. So,
tell me about the 3 blokes in the living room kind of thing.
At the beginning, so my 2 mates, they used to do a breakfast show on Fresh FM for many years. It was just a volunteer thing, so it was nothing they really committed to at the time. It was just a couple of mates on air. So when we decided to do this podcast, we had a meeting. We're like, guys, what are we doing with this podcast? And so I was in the commercial radio world. Liam was in the sales commercial radio world, and Big Al was a stand-up comedian. So we thought that we sort of had 3 different sort of areas that we could then invest in and hopefully come up with a good product. So literally we decided that we would just sit down with an esky full of beers at my place and start recording, and the job will be left up to me to sort of edit and make it and create it into something. So that's how the Badcast started, and we recorded about, I think it was about 6 to 8 episodes, and we're like, what should we call this podcast? And part of the journey of recording that of recording that podcast was coming up with a name as well. So we decided on the Badcast because we knew that a lot of people out there would think it was bad. So that's where that sort of began, and it really formed itself into something sensational. Like, you know, we were recording in pubs across Adelaide. We'd have we had someone from Melbourne fly over to Adelaide to go visit the pub that we were recording in, just because he heard it on the podcast. So the pub was obviously very happy with that, and we had many free beers after that. But it was a very interesting and fun journey, and I guess that's all about being an entrepreneur as well. You're doing everything that you possibly can to get this thing up and running, whether it be editing the show, whether it be buying the microphones, trying to find out what the best platform to use, or and at that time we were actually doing it all ourselves. So we decided that we would have another mate of ours come in and do all the technical stuff. So he uploaded to an FTP, and then that was getting off to Apple, and we're trying to work out how the hell to get to the podcast other places. But it was a fun journey. Yeah. And you know, all the mistakes that we learned, we then invest and let everyone else know about it as well. And that's, you know, hence the Ozcast network behind me, and that's where we're at.
That's awesome. Thank you. Now tell me, a lot of my audience want to know about social media, and, you know, some of them are podcast. How would you suggest they use social media for podcasting? Yeah,
one thing that we've definitely picked up on over the years is to obviously use it, and which is a great hint when it comes to social media. Being social on the social media is also great. And by saying that, you're not just posting and things like that, but actually commenting back to the fans or the listeners of your podcast, but also joining all the groups. I know there's like Australian podcasters groups all over the place, and really getting involved with that community. I mean, that's what social media started off to be. It was a community of people coming together and talking about stuff that they're, you know, whatever niche that they're all into. Yeah. So one thing that we definitely found is getting involved in anything possible, you know, being supportive, be positive, and that's really helped us along the way.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell me a massive fail you've had using social media for Ozcast Network?
Yeah. Well, one thing that we did find out in the early days is we had too much going on for the amount of people power that we had. So we had the Facebooks, we had the Instagrams, we had the Twitter, we had a lot of weird apps going on as well. But then we also had Ozcast Network, we had the Badcast, we had, you know, individual Facebooks, we had then the Adelaide Podcast Festival Facebooks, and we were at that time, we were only 3 guys. So we're just 3 guys trying to handle it. Like myself and Liam were probably a bit more sort of savvy towards the digital media sort of thing. So we tried to keep it afloat, but it was very, very difficult. So one thing we found is consolidating a lot of the Facebook groups and things like that, and really trying to work out a bit of a plan of attack when it came to posting, you know, scheduling. Should we allocate an hour of our day every day sort of just doing social media and catching up on those things, so we didn't miss out on any either opportunities or any sort of like ways that we could help promote our podcast as well. So that's what we sort of found very early on, and at the moment we're looking for people to either employ or get involved that'll help out with that social media, because, you know, we're now just 2 guys in an office with 50 podcasts, an advertising agency, a podcast festival, and so much more as well. So one thing that we took from it is that we know, and as a lot of the big companies out there know as well, is that you need to start employing people full-time to take care of this, because it's a massive industry and it is a full-time position, definitely, when it comes to media.
You're also at that stage now where you can employ someone. At the beginning, when entrepreneurs start, you don't have the funds to do that. So it's kind of what works. Yeah. I normally tell people just pick one platform and start with that.
Yep.
And
yep,
you know,
100%.
niche that. But so can you tell me also what's a massive win using social media for Ozcast Network?
Yeah, well, one thing that we found is, because over time we've grown from just the one podcast to now over 50,
Yeah.
that particular the network would then have, at least say 1 to 2 podcasters per podcast at an absolute minimum. So that would mean that there's potentially 100 people within the network all sharing on social media, and we don't have to worry about it as much anymore. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so we obviously share everything we possibly can, but when it comes down to actually creating content on social media for us at the moment, it's all about sharing and helping their communities grow as well.
Okay, yeah.
So basically the win out of that is that the more people that we have in our network, the more people we can help and, guide with the podcast, but then they pay back by helping us on social media and helping share all of our content. And it takes the pressure off us sitting there every day and scheduling a post every half an hour, because you have 50 podcasts. So if you sort of work out the maths on that, it's quite a few posts if you're trying to create brand new content every time. So,
well, I would suggest, Andy, even for your own social media, you just do it, in the quiet times, like in the evening. I spend 2 hours minimum a day on social media to try and get my messages out, or when I work for clients, I spend a good amount of time doing that. But for each client, I always say at least spend 1 hour a day, and you can do that while you're cooking dinner, or when you're in bed and you're doing the downtime. You can spend at least an hour responding or posting or whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least 1 hour, Andy.
Yeah, at least I'll do it when I'm trying to put the kids to bed.
You could do it filming yourself putting the kids to bed.
I'll just be like, shush. Go to sleep. There we go.
Yeah, that would work. Not.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a couple of questions. This is Varun from the USA, so I'll just play her. I hope you can hear this. Actually, I'll just turn it up.
Hey Caria, this is Parul here, calling from Phoenix, Arizona, the United States. I am an author and publisher of the Growth Hacking book, and I have a question for Andy. Put and confidence while interviewing guests.
Oh, sorry, so I think she's asking what voice, how do you warm up the voice, and how do you get confidence when you interview guests?
Well, I mean, the confidence is going to come over time. So the more you do it, the easier it's obviously going to get. One thing that I definitely do when I was warming up, I was doing it about 10 minutes ago, is walking around. The confidence will come when you know that you don't have to worry about thinking about things like speaking properly and, maybe mucking up a few words here and there. So I think I've spoken to you about this before, where this voice exercise I learned at radio school, and that is to literally go through your vowels, so your A, E, I, O, U, but you over-pronounce them with your mouth. So you're like A, E, I, O, U, and you continually do that for a couple of minutes. You spice it up a bit by, going backwards and, going from A to O and all that sort of thing, and that actually loosens up everything that's going on in here. So when you do talk, it comes out more fluent, you can control it without having to think about it, and that's one less thing you have to worry about when it comes to podcasting or doing video or vlogs or whatever.
Yeah. Can you do the vowels one more time?
Are you going to use this? Are you going to turn this into a GIF or something like that? I feel like you would.
Might do. Only for my social media.
But it also helps warming up the voice, as well as I'm not a professional in this sort of I'm not a doctor. So it really does warm up all the muscles in here, and whatever strings need to be pulled to make your face make noise, basically. So that's one thing that has absolutely helped me nail whenever I've had to do MCing or radio announcing or podcasting or really having a meeting as well. So you don't have to worry about that, and your confidence comes, and you can nail every other skill that you need to nail in the particular podcast or whatever.
I'd also suggest you do it in the mirror and laugh at yourself, because that will alleviate any tension.
Absolutely.
And it would mean that you would go in feeling happy, and you would be in a good mood no matter how you started your day.
Yeah, exactly. We have another one, M from Newcastle.
How can I build my following on my podcast?
Yeah, okay. I'll give it 2 points regarding maybe building yourself a bit of a promo, an audio promo, and sharing it with other podcasts and doing a promo swap. That'll definitely help. But when it comes to social media, very similar to what I said earlier about getting onto all the sort of podcasting groups, especially, that'll help with you feeling confident about your product, any questions you have, and also you naturally build a following. So someone on there that may be a podcaster will see what you're saying, or they may hear what you're saying when you post whatever you post on there, and then they could think, okay, this person's actually a really nice person, I want to help them out, and would share your product, share your post, whatever. And then that'll help you build a bit more of an audience. But also just being social on social media, that's pretty much the key, isn't it? So getting out there and, maybe looking up, depending on the niche of your podcast and whatever the podcast is about or who you're interviewing, it may relate to someone else in the world. So getting on there, searching up hashtags, searching just the search field area, and trying to connect with people that may be interested.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always go into Facebook groups and see what people are talking about, and then try and share it there. So I'll do. Yeah,
like you might be doing a podcast about V8 supercars.
Yeah.
And you get onto a group about V8 supercars. Hey guys, listen to this, and then all of a sudden you've got another 50 listens in that day. So
that hasn't happened to me yet.
It will, Caria. It will. It's a long game. The old podcasting game. It's a long game. So, and that's one thing that we realized from the beginning. It is a long game. So no matter if there's an episode that doesn't take off today, it may take off in 2 years' time. We did a part of the Badcast is that we did an episode called Centurion. If you have ever been to a frat party in the US of A, you would know something similar, where you drink 100 shots in 100 minutes.
And we did that. We decided that was a bit of a challenge for the end of the year. It was New Year's Eve that we recorded this on. And we did the 100 shots in 100 minutes.
Each, or between the three of you.
Beers and cider, and we just recorded it and tried to record a podcast while we did it. And still to this day, that's one of the most listened to podcasts on the Badcast channel. So,
well, I'm going to listen to that one now.
Yeah, maybe listen to the first hour and a half. That's about it. I think shot 60 is when Liam dropped out. But it was just a fun episode, and people still love it. So yeah. Okay. I guess when you publish an episode, just think about that.
Just wait to any young people watching that. We do not advise you to do that at all.
Oh, hell no. No.
Don't do that.
Stay school kids. Yeah.
Learn from Andy's mistake.
Yeah.
Learn from Uncle Andy. Don't do that. Yeah.
Okay, I've got another one from Deb from India.
Sure.
Hello, Caria. This is Dave from Growth Hacking, Odisha, India. Could Andy suggest a few tips on how to make a tech forum podcast interesting? This forum is basically dealing with music production and music gear.
Definitely be adding in music, and like the thing is, it's a niche podcast. Sometimes it doesn't actually need to be interesting to the commercial world to get a lot of listens, because you may be giving some advice or showing off a product that people are definitely interested in. So there's an angle like that where maybe you don't have to worry about that if you don't have time or money or the skills or the availability for that sort of thing. But definitely if you want to package it up to be something that could be a commercially viable or something interesting to someone that may not have come across the technical aspects of that particular podcast, definitely get involved with the production side of things. But there's been over the last couple of years a bit of a hole in the sort of industry when it comes to the rules and regulations to using music in podcasts. And we've found that over the last sort of year, like here in Australia, we deal with APRA AMCOS, and trying to get the rules with music is quite difficult because they only control the sort of the regulations in Australia. They don't control what happens in the US or happens in India or Russia or wherever your podcast is being heard. So there's different rules for different countries. And when it comes to record labels, I've worked a lot with record labels in the past, and also have heard and been in meetings when it comes to record labels in radio. And it's a bit of a spicy one, because obviously they want to get their money if you're using a song that's signed to a record label. Essentially, you have to pay money if it plays in the US, in Australia, in India, wherever. So there's been a bit of a hole in the industry where it's come to podcasts and they're like, hey, where can I get music from? There are some free ones out there, but then there's also, you have to really do it properly, where if you're going to use, say, a song for a theme for your podcast, you've really got to pay for it and double check the licensing on that, and the person that made it will forward that onto you. And
what about on free things? Like there are websites where you can get music, because that's where I get my intro music from. I've either had it recorded by a friend who's a producer, or I've got the license where they say all you need to do is mention my name. So as long as you've got stuff like that, as long as you've got the information to back up your audio, because what it may not happen now, but in the future there's going to be, bots going through podcasts, because there's so many podcasts out there, people using music they probably shouldn't. So there will be bots out there picking up those podcasts in the future, and because podcasting stays around forever until you take it down, there's a chance that, a podcast you made 10 years ago where you didn't realize that you needed a license for will get picked up, and then they will then calculate how many times it's been listened to and how much you now have to pay. So it's kind of about doing it properly from the beginning. And if you don't have that information, well, then either find it or make sure that any music that you do get, it's licensed to do what you need it to do. Okay. I know one thing to do this year for Ozcast is we've got so many composers and producers that sort of have music but don't know where to put it, is that we'll be starting a website where people can literally just pay a couple of bucks. They can utilize that song, and the license is to do with podcasting. And it makes it easy for everyone. If you've got any that you want me to use on my podcast, happy to do that.
Yeah, we do. I'll flick through some examples and some links so you can have a look and listen. There's some heavy metal. I don't know if that's really your thing there, Caria, but you never know what you do on the weekend. You know what I'm saying? There's heavy metal. There's radio type stuff like, news themes and things like that. So yeah, we'll definitely forward it through to you.
All right, thank you. And then one last question from Vanessa in Melbourne.
Hi, Caria. Sure. Vanessa from Melbourne. I love the CARIACARES show. I just wanted some advice of Andy about recording an intro and an outro. Can he assist with that? Thank you.
Okay, pretty broad question. So
probably in relation to podcasting, how would you do a sting, say, for an intro and an outro of your podcast? Yeah,
it depends on the podcast as well. So if I'll use Lewis Howes, right? The School of Greatness. I'll use him as an example. So he has a quick intro that he talks about, then the main intro, which is like talking about the podcast. It's the same one every time. It's essentially branding.
Yeah.
And then he would then intro into the interview if he needs to as well. It differs. So it really depends on if you've got the time and the skill or the access to the equipment or whatever to do it. So I know with the Badcast, we produced an intro. Yeah. It was just something simple. We started off with something that just said the Badcast, and that was it, with some theme music. But then we got a bit more integral, where we just added some more information, like spoke about the three hosts and stuff like that. But it really does differ. It depends on her podcast. Do you know her podcast at all?
No, I don't. She didn't really leave that information. But say, like, for instance, my podcast, I do that. I do an intro of what the topic is. It's a really quick thing. Then I lead into the music, what my podcast is about, and then I go straight into the podcast. And at the end, I do a wrap up of what the podcast was, or the 3 tips to take away what they can do. It's like a call to action, and then use and see you in the next video or whatever it is.
In the radio world, one thing that we are taught and have to do, because it's not a podcast and it just disappears right away, right? So it just disappears in the thin air, where a podcast stays around. So I would utilize what I'm about to say in the podcasting, especially the intros and the outros and stuff, is always be forward selling. Always be giving, at the end of it, like you said, a call to action, and forward selling maybe onto the next episode, if that's the sort of thing where it's a pre-recorded, produced series maybe, or if it's like, if you pre-record your interviews in advance and you know who the next person is that's going to be coming on, you can then use that as an opportunity to then forward sell to the next one. It also means that if someone's just literally typed in like Andy Martin Ozcast into CARIACARES, it's come up with my podcast. But at the end of it, you then forward sell that you've got some amazing person coming up next, which you will. The listener would then be engaged to then listen on or binge on to the next podcast. And then that you've got yourself a listener, if you know what I mean. So I'll definitely look into intros and outros. An intro, for branding, and also forward selling quickly what's coming up, because a lot of people, when it comes to listening habits, will just listen to the beginning. They'll try to find out if it's someone they want to listen to, well then happy days. If it's someone they don't know, you quickly explaining what they'll be talking about sometimes isn't in the description on the app that they're listening to with their podcast.
Is there anything that you'd like to add about using social media or podcasting for our viewers?
Literally, with the social media, just be social. Remember, there's always a footprint. So no matter if you're trolling someone or giving some advice or opinions that may come across not the right way, maybe question it first. Is this what I would say to this person face to face? Because they're doing something that they're very passionate about. And if you can help them improve, then happy days. But if you're just sticking a knife in for no particular reason at all, not a great thing. And it'll always bounce back on you. Regarding podcasting, listen to OzcastNetwork.com. Get on there and check out all the podcasts. If you do need any help at all, or you'd like to maybe look at coming on board the network, or you want to know more about the Adelaide Podcast Festival or advertising in podcasts across Australia, Povertize, see that right there? You can hit us up there as well at povertize.com.au. And that's pretty much it, I reckon.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Andy. Have a great day.
No worries at all. Thank you so much, Caria.
Now you know exactly how to start a podcast, what it takes, and how you can contact Ozcast Network if you want to start a podcast. Just mention my name when you do it. If you need the details, they'll be in the comments below. And if you want more digital marketing and social media tips, these videos. Next week, I'm going to be taking you through content marketing SEO. Ooh! Exciting stuff. If you want to join a community of digital nomads just like us, join the social media playbook course. You can find a link in the comments below or on my website cariawatt.com. Now reach out with any questions you may have, or let me know what topics you'd like me to cover in the comments below, because it really helps. I want to produce content just for you. And remember to hit the like button and share this with a friend who could use a helping hand with their business or brand. Why? Because Caria cares about women helping women and men who could use a helping hand. Until the next video, peace! No, really, peace.